Hi, I'm State Representative J.T. Wilcox. I'm the House Republican Leader in Washington, and this is a wrap-up video. We had what's called Sine Die a couple days ago. Sine Die is the last day of a legislative session, and I've had a couple of days now to gain perspective on what happened, and I've talked to just about every press outlet in the state of Washington in those days. And now it's time for me to share what's going on with all of you. This session was disappointing in many ways. The first thing that occurs to me is we started out the session behind security fences and wire with lots of guards, and we ended up the session the same way. I don't think it's necessary to have this kind of security, and I asked many times for the majority to consider rolling that back, but that never happened. The other thing that is unchanged is we came into the session with almost a year under our belts of emergency orders and a state of emergency declared by the governor with no end in sight. And we are leaving the session with more than 400 days of state of emergency and no end in sight. I am deeply disappointed that the majority was not interested in doing something that would show some difference with the executive branch. I've been in the legislature for 11 years now, and I've seen the legislature many times stand up to the governor, not because it's personal, but because in order to have a functioning three-branch government, each branch has to stand up for itself. And this time, I feel like partisan solidarity won out over the desire to keep the balance of power that we've been designed since 1889 here in this state to have. I sincerely hope that we can see a different situation next year. And I would ask the governor to take the earliest opportunity to declare the end of this emergency. We don't have anything against the governor having these powers, but they should not be endless without a check. And Republican bills that were intended to allow the legislature to have a say in the length of the emergency never had a chance this year. We had a couple of good things happen. First of all, something called the Working Families Tax Credit. Very important. It's an idea that's been around for quite a few years, never funded, not once over the last 13 years that the program was theoretically available. House and Senate Republicans fully funded that in our budget, and later on the majority party, the Democrats, decided to go ahead and fund it too. I think this is really important. We have a tax system that provides incentives in places where it seems like it's good for the economy, and I have zero hesitation to offer a tax credit to hardworking families that sometimes are victimized by our tax system that can be regressive on the lower end. The other really positive thing was something that deals with forest practices. Anybody that's lived in Washington over the last few years knows that the wildfire risk is out of control, and the result is immense releases of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and really, really unhealthy air for anybody that has any kind of lung impairment. And over time, I think it can have an impact on even healthy people and children. In part, this is caused by poor management in our state forest. And that's because the legislature has never been willing to fund the things that are necessary to have healthy forests. The private sector does it all the time, and small private landowners do it, but the state was not. We finally got that through. It's been a Republican idea for many years, and it passed in a highly bipartisan fashion. So that was a good thing. A couple of really bad things at the very end. Republicans tend to represent hardworking people, working families that live in less urban areas because that's where housing is affordable. And that also means that many of our constituents have long commutes because the economy is not growing in the less urban areas. So we have somewhat rural residents having to commute long distances to urban areas where jobs exist. And there were two major environmental policies that are going to have an immense impact on the cost of commuting for these working families. And unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to have as big of a positive impact as the forest practices bill that I just mentioned. It's going to be very expensive for you. Estimates are that it will cost up to 60 cents per gallon or even more, maybe $10 every fill up. And if you're a commuter, you may be filling up several times a week. I think this is the most disappointing thing that has happened during this session. And I'm going to continue to keep an eye on this. And if there's a way to mitigate the damage, I think House Republicans and I are going to be very interested in seizing any opportunity to do that. There were a lot of other things that happened, probably too many to include in a short video, but I'll be sending out more messages as time goes by. Thanks, everybody.